Welcome back, Guardians. Today's report is more rumor and conjecture than actual field reporting, and perhaps that's just what we need sometimes. We need a little hope that our enemies, the Vex, Cabal, Fallen, and Hive, aren't always set to be against us, but rather a select few hold out the notion that Guardians are not the real enemy. That's how we first described Variks, an Elixni in search of a kell, holding fast to the pre-whirlwind Elixni culture of House Judgment, the teachings of House Reign, and the royalty of the House of Kings. But after the Taken War, the loss of Morazov and the majority of the Reef's military might had a devastating effect on the House Judgment. Variks, still loyal to the Zov family, did what he could, monitoring the prison of elders. Perhaps this too was his prison, in the hopes that a Zov would come forward and reclaim the throne, lead the Kellis of Judgment. But first we should provide some context. How did the prison of elders come into such a shape of disrepair? The Red War, the Taken War, the usual secrecy of Awoken and their plans all had an effect on the prison state, as well as the mental state of its warden, perhaps the second most loyal subject of the Queen. During the Red War, during those dark days of the initial invasion, the Reef tried to warn humanity on Earth, attempting to provide some tactical insight to the Cabal's massive war effort. But nothing would get through to the city's defenses. The only thing Variks could provide was hopeful thoughts, as Petravench, acting commander of the Reef's military forces, ordered that all remaining Awoken forces retreat deep into the Reef, into its various nooks and crannies to hide away from the Cabal's war. A confirmation. Petravench and the limited forces at her command evacuated what settlements they could and disappeared into the nooks and crannies of the Reef. She would be unable to send help to the prison. First, House Judgment, then House Wolves, then Kell Morazov. Now he could feel the rest of his adopted people slipping away from him. So it was again that Variks was alone, perhaps for the final time. No kell to command him, and only a prison to hold his thoughts and his body. For Variks, the new goal, while Kellis, was to redeem the Elixni, bring them back to some semblance of what they once were. It was a hard notion to conceive. The Fallen no longer wore colors or represented houses. They are, for lack of a better words, mere scavengers. But to Variks, there was a hope, a certain feeling that drove him at his core that his people could become something great, something changed, something free from the torment of their past. To do this, Variks needed the Barons of the Scorn, the ones that were rallying his people to fight again. Variks had seen this before, with Skolas of House Wolves rallied the Fallen, and only death came to his people. Your will must remain your own, he told himself. You are the last Elixni of House Judgment. The destiny of your people is in your hands. You will save them. You will stand for the Fallen. Variks' thoughts raced through his mind. He had reached out to the Guardians of the Great Machine in an attempt to use their power to capture the remaining Scorn, all in the hopes that he may cure them of their ailment. And Cade delivered. He returned to the prison of elders with not one, but two bounties. Fickrel, the last of the Scorn Barons, and an awoken male far removed from his senses. Variks and Fickrel had a history together. Fickrel once tended to the great and perhaps last prime servitor Calyx as the Archon above all others. Variks had urged Fickrel to sever the bond of Calyx with that of his people and hide it away, remove it from the machinations of other Fallen like Skolas, who sought to use the Prime's power to once again unite the Fallen for war. the pact with Fickrell to sever Calyx Prime and secret it away, the Prime vanishing, and again Fickrell on the horizon, preparing to give the Fallen what they so rightfully deserve. Their history together would be mired in animosity and betrayal as Fickrell became something different. Not like the Siva-infested Fallen on Earth, but darker, more base, using a sort of taken ether, a magic that allowed the fallen Archon to control and even remove death from his comrades. Unnatural, unnerving, and perverse magic, and Variks knew that Fickrell and his new ally, this awoken man, a far cry from the sound-minded Uldren Zov, were together in a new pact. A pact of betrayal to his people, a pact of lies and death and reanimation and forced servitude. Variks was now in imminent danger, and he may have known for the first time he crossed eyes with Uldren. Uldren had something attached to him, a certain dark flicker that danced across the odd awoken's eyes. Even so, perhaps this was nothing. But Variks sensed something different, as if the will of Uldren had been taken, perverted into something closer to addiction, and transformed to serve another's will. Each time Variks performed his rounds, he asked himself what loyalty, if any, he owed to the prince, and each time he stepped short when he bore witness to the prince's ramblings. Today was no different. There sat Uldren, elbows atop knees, staring into the same dark corner of the cell, face concealed by his long black hair, seemingly communing with nothing. I see now. Yes, that's good. So good. More listening, more nodding. Then that's what we shall do. And look, sister, he is already here. Guardians know now that Uldren was afflicted by Riven, the last Ahamkara, and had hoped to use Uldren to serve her sinister intentions. The death of Cade, the destruction of the Dreaming City, the removal of Variks from the prison, all have Riven responsible at its core. However, let us not forget that Uldren and Fickrell, the murderers of our beloved Hunter Vanguard, were in prison within the prison of elders, and only one held the key to their freedom. But Variks was poisoned by the words of Uldren from the breath of Riven, that Morozov was alive and well, that she was trapped within the Dreaming City. It was a lie that Uldren believed, poison-minded or not, and it was a falsehood that Variks attached himself to, so desperate to be led, to have a kell. Uldren leaned in, placed a finger against his lips, and spoke low. "I have a secret for you, Variks. I know you want to hear it." Variks answered with a single, drawn-out, and ever so slight nod. "Your kell lives," Uldren whispered. He leaned in a little closer and asked one question Variks had never been able to answer. "Do you know where your true loyalty lies, Variks?" With that, Variks would allow the prisoners to be free. His time in the prison of elders was over. He needed to unite his people. They could not be the scorn. They could not be the bannerless. They must be the Eliksni, no longer fallen, but redeemed. He sent out messages across the system in the hopes that the fallen will answer his rally cry, return to the banner of houses and kells. The great machine stood in judgment. Eliksni fell to fighting, fell to hate. Emotion caught in his voice. Cannot stomach this hate. As he spoke, the ship's engines rumbled to life. On the screens, Variks could see explosions resonating through the prison, his former charges running rampant. His ship passed through the bay's barrier and began to move off. Nowhere else to go, no one else to be here. He drew himself up to his full height, and so I become Variks the Kell, House Judgment Envoy to the Elixni people. No choice, he repeated, chuckling deep in his throat. His voice was calm. Elixni must rise, yes? Kell of judgment, Kell of the fallen, but also a betrayer, a murderer, and perhaps our enemy? By rights, Variks is our enemy. He freed Sav and Vikrul. He betrayed Cade and Petra, and he allowed the prison of Elders inhabitants to be set upon the galaxy. But perhaps Variks, like Sav, could be forgiven. Perhaps he believed he was serving his former Kell by freeing Uldren Zav, and that his belief of being the true leader of the Elixni would best serve the great machine, the Savs, and the children of Earth. Perhaps he can be forgiven. Perhaps, like Sav, he can be redeemed by the light.